Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast episode. Today, we have the amazing, phenomenal, fantastic special guest, Julia Sotas Mattis today, who is who is a certified certified facilitator of access consciousness and also a trophy wife. She's been a part of Access Consciousness for over 12 years and also a Being You certified facilitator, an abuse hold practitioner, an access bars facilitator, and an energetic synthesis of structural embodiment practitioner. So today we'll be chatting and going through some questions that were sent in. If you'd like to book a session, you can do so at www.juliasotas.com. And she also has a profile on Access Consciousness, and the website is www.accessconsciousness.com, and go under Find a Facilitator. And I definitely recommend a session. Definitely.
Thank you. That's great, Shawna. What an intro. I feel like the most accomplished woman in the world.
Well, welcome and thank you for coming on my podcast episode today.
Yeah, it's really fun to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yep. How you doing?
I'm great. I was telling Shawna before we got on the podcast that it's birthday week at the Mattis house. And when it comes to birthdays, I am a PR agent from New York City and also a suburban mother. And so I really know how to throw a party. So I've got 3 birthdays coming up. It's my son's birthday, my daughter's birthday, and my husband's birthday all in 1 week. So balls to the walls in birthday mode, and I'm loving it.
Sounds like fun.
It is. It's really fun.
And how that is a cool energy or person to ask for to show up in life, because like you had said, that's like a nurturing energy.
Yeah. You mean like somebody who would throw you a birthday like that, like over the top? Yeah, totally. My mom was like that. She always made us these crazy cakes from scratch. Like she made us like Barbie cakes with Barbie standing up. And this is before the internet or Pinterest. You know what I mean? So like she had to think all these things up in her head, and she was so creative. But she would make us these Barbie cakes with like Barbie standing upright and the dress is made out of cake, I don't know if you've ever seen those ones. Or like one year we went to Jamaica and she created this whole pool scene. She created a cake and then she dug out the middle of the cake and filled it with blue jello for the swimming pool in Jamaica. And then that year I fell in love with one of the guys who worked at the resort. I fell in love with a Jamaican. And so she got black licorice babies and then turned it into my crush at the Jamaican swimming pool.
That's awesome. That is the best thing I've ever heard. Oh, that is so cool.
Years. Oh my God. And she had the umbrellas, and I mean, it was so full out. Everything that my mom did and does is so full out that I feel so normal compared to her, because she's a set designer, a costume designer, a wedding decorator. She's transformed the loft of our barn. So anyways, hilarious. So anyways, so I come by it honestly.
That is going above and beyond.
Yes. So I like to go above and beyond for the birthdays of the people in my life.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But...
so.
That's so cool.
It's that Jamaican cake. I saw a picture of it a year ago, and I reminded me of it because it's probably 13 maybe when it was my birthday cake. And it's
I am
so good.
Crying.
Oh, I can't believe she used a licorice baby. I love her. That was freaking hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, and then the blue jello,
cute, right?
Yeah, if you have that photo on hand.
I'll see if I can get her. I'm sure she has archives, that woman, of photos. I will get it and I will send it to you, Shawna. And we can put it in the show notes or something so that everyone can see the Jamaican birthday cake.
Okay.
We probably gone in January because my birthday is February 13th. So yeah, so funny. So I'm making Aria she wants a sweet 16. It's her sweet 16. So I'm making her like, she has, what am I making her? It's this like heart-shaped cake that's like pink with like lace and frills. So it's going to take me 3 days to make. So today's day 1 and I'm going to practice my piping skills, my decorating skills, because I'm really not that good. But I think with YouTube, you can make yourself good at anything these days. So here we go.
I mean, like, if you can bake, then there you go. And then I think the decorating part would be where, I mean, that's probably a lot of detail and like effort.
Yes, I'm a little bit scared because she showed me a picture of what she wants and it's so big. It's such a big cake. So I'm having to use like a lot of cake. And I'm making this icing that's called Swiss meringue buttercream. So it's like from Switzerland. You could have a French meringue buttercream or a Swiss meringue buttercream. And they're two different icings. And I forget the difference, to be honest, but it's like this very elevated icing that like is very complicated, but it's beautiful and tastes amazing. So today I just like bought a Betty Crocker like canned icing to like practice my piping skills. So today's just practice day. But yes.
Are you just making like the one cake or are you making 3?
Well, I'm gonna bake 3 cakes and layer them. And I'm gonna bake those today and freeze them too.
Nice.
And then like Saturday is the birthday party. So that'll be like the icing day. But Anthony's birthday is tomorrow. So I'm making his cake today too. This is a very busy day in the kitchen.
Well, thank you
I also made homemade chicken soup and that's it. No, just homemade chicken soup and then I was counting that I had 4 recipes today, but I'm counting practicing my icing piping skills as that was my 4th recipe, but it's not. It's just part of the cake.
Sounds great. Well, it sounds like you're super busy, so I'm glad you found the time.
Yes. Yes. So today is dedicated to cake. So anyways, we're doing access consciousness. So this ties back into create your life based on who you are and what's fun for you and what you love to do. And so this is an example of who I am and what's fun for me and what I love to do. So you can ask yourself if you're tuning in, who am I and what's fun for me and what do I love to do and what do I love to contribute in the world?
And
because I think that's something. Oh, go ahead.
Changing the world by being you, and that's all.
Yeah, changing the world by being you. Because I think that somewhere that we really get caught up a lot is like value judgments. And value judgments are really dangerous because like a celebrity would be like have a high value judgment and somebody who was like a janitor would have a low value judgment. And like so we think that like if we're just making our family like a really cool birthday party that doesn't have value in the world and doesn't change the world, but it really does. And it's really like things like what we are and what we be creates an energetic wave out into the universe around us. It just does. And so by being grateful for who you are and proud of who you are and proud of what you contribute and doing the things that are fun for you, that really does rock the world. You don't have to be on national television for you to make a big effect, you know?
Well, I think you're speaking to, someone had said, like, I don't know who I am. And I'm like, oh, wow. And so there was that conversation. So I think that really helps with what you just said. And I guess, should we hop to a question that came in?
Sure. I just want to say one more thing before we go to the question. I was sitting at a coffee shop, like a restaurant cafe kind of thing. And I think just eating my lunch by myself. And there was a lady at a table of like 6 people, and it was like her and like 5 or 6 preschoolers. They were like maybe 4. And she was building a tower with them. Like the whole place was covered with Legos, the whole table. And then she had this book about like the tallest buildings in the world. And the kids were like gonna each build their tall building. And this woman was so good with the kids. Like, oh, there's a lot of people who work with kids who aren't good with kids. And there are very special people who work with kids and are. And she was so good with them and so sweet with them. And I remember being 3 and 4. And I remember being 3 and 4, and I remember like my preschool teachers and like the people who really touched my life, and like they just hold so much value in my universe to this day. um in fact, I saw one I hadn't seen in 15 years 2 weeks ago. I was at a funeral for a cousin of mine who dropped dead at 48, quite young, and she was such a beloved member of the community, and she died. And but I was at her funeral, and I saw Mrs. Chopchuk, and Mrs. Chopchuk is just the sweetest, most wonderful lady in the world, and she hasn't aged at all. I mean, she maybe went. I don't know how old she was when she was in my life, but I think she's over 90 now, and she looks exactly the same as she did 15 years ago. And it was just such a joy and a pleasure to see her, and she just affected my life so deeply. And this woman, teaching these kids how to build a tower, like, had no concept of how important and valuable she was. And it saddens me that where we place value, basically, because that is far more effectual than a whole lot of what the greatest so-called leaders in the world are doing. So I just think it's so important to remember that, just how our energy is such a value, and how we place it and direct it.
Yeah, like, I mean, I guess the opposite is sometimes how people devalue themselves. However, so there's those two things where you can actually, because I see sometimes people where they do the devaluing, but the opposite is actually valuing you and yourself and your energy. And like you said, like focusing on what you love. But the beautiful thing in this is seeing that being you can change the world, and exploring who you are and enjoying life can be that difference.
Yeah, totally.
So it's like,
Totally.
yeah, it's like empowering to, and it's okay, like it's okay to build a life that you enjoy and that you're happy with, and that you are like that generative contribution to the world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I mean, it's easy for me to say. I've been working at this tooth and nail hardcore for the last 13 years. This is what I've dedicated my whole life to becoming it myself and teaching people, how to value themselves. But like, I think that I don't even know how to describe it. Just we can get there. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but you use the tools of access consciousness. And there's a whole lot in this world that doesn't work, but access consciousness tools, they are something that actually works. And so really using them, you really can get there. And that's why I just love access consciousness. It's not about anything except for being so happy in your life, being so fulfilled, and it's actually possible.
And it can be as fast like as you'd like it to be. So it could take like half an hour, or sometimes, it could take 10 years. And like I'll sometimes read or practice some manuals, and I'll just kind of keep with it. And then when I run a bar session and I see a change happen, I'm like, oh wow, like all of these tools are contributing no matter what.
Yeah. Yep. Like my dad had he got Bell's palsy, which is where like facial palsy, where basically the muscle stopped working in half of his face. And it was awful to see my dad like that. Like he looked like his half of his face was sagging. It was not, not something you want to see in somebody you care about. But luckily, I flew to Canada for the funeral and then was visiting, like staying with my mom and dad. And my sister flew up from Los Angeles. And so we were all together. And I worked on my dad and I gave him 2 access bars sessions and 2 body process sessions. And Bell's palsy can take years to go away if it ever goes away. And my dad got over it in less than 2 weeks. And he just FaceTimed me and I saw his face and he looks just like my dad. He's not sagging anymore. He had to wear a Pirates patch on his eye. It was awful. And it's like, we actually have something that like changes things, We're so lucky. We're just so lucky.
That's awesome. This is a very awesome conversation.
That's great. I agree. I'm like, with you.
I could, me. I could talk for like hours.
Okay. The questions. Okay.
Well, what I love about this though is that I'm like, well, okay, so like let's see when you're available next to chat,
Yeah, totally. I'm down.
Or like booking the session's always a great way to get change in facilitation because you book a session, and then you get the change in facilitation there as well.
Yeah. Private sessions are awesome.
Yeah. That's like, one of my favorite things. Yeah, so we had 2 questions come in. And so the first one was, how does one quit drinking when they rely so heavily on it?
Yeah, drinking is interesting because like, I mean, it feels good to get drunk, like,
Yeah. And then like that's the drinking part, and then there's the substance as well. So I guess there is like this, maybe it's like an addiction question.
Okay, just read the whole question and then we can address it.
That's like basically it. How would one quit drinking, and then how would one like manage the addictions to like substances?
Right. Well, I mean, the greatest addiction on the planet is the addiction to, guess what it is? Guess what people are the most addicted to?
Judgment?
Yes. Judgment. Judgment, usually of themselves. And so, like, I have a family member who has long deceased. He was an old man, but he was an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic my whole life. And actually most of my family members were alcoholics. I come from a lot of, thankfully, I am not an alcoholic, but I actually don't even really drink. But, I know that getting drunk is really fun and it cuts off your awareness. So you don't have to be aware of things that you don't want to be aware of. But like this family member of mine, like, he was sexually abused as a teenage boy. And I'm not saying that you have to go through something like that to become an alcoholic or that there's a direct correlation, but basically what he did was he went so into himself as a being, he shut down so much of himself. And that sexual shame that so many people deal with, after sexual abuse is so intense. And so drinking is a really, really great way to cut off that sexual shame, or it could be any kind of feeling or awareness that you don't like, and so alcoholism is a great tool. I don't think we should judge ourselves for it. There are better tools, but if you are an alcoholic, it's like, don't judge yourself. I mean, I think that is the most important place to start, is to come out of judgment, stop trying to force yourself to not be an alcoholic, and get into an allowance of being an alcoholic and being totally cool with that. If you can get there, and I highly recommend reading the book by Gary Douglas, The Gift of Allowance. it is just giving me a whole new, you're nodding too, Shawna, you've read it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Oh, I've never read anything like that in my goddamn life. It's so good. And so, that's a great place to start, is by reading that book to overcome your judgment of yourself for being an alcoholic. But that's really where you need to get to. If you get into allowance of that, then it becomes a lot easier to change it. So, and there's another book called Right Recovery for You by my most amazing friend, Marilyn Bradford, who has 1,000 letters behind her name. She's absolutely ingenious, just one of the most wonderful people on this planet and one of the smartest. And Marilyn is wonderful at working with people who are in recovery. And one of my favorite stories is she was working with a lady who was an alcoholic, or so she thought. And um Marilyn said, like, you know, what if you the woman came to her and said, I can't drink, I can't drink, I can't drink. And Marilyn's like, well, what if you did drink, but you were really present with every single sip when you drank? You really tasted it, you really felt it, you really were with the alcohol that you were drinking, the way that it went down. You were really present with every part of the experience of drinking it. And so the woman who like would go out and drink margaritas every night went out that night and said and drank went to the Mexican restaurant that she always went to and had her margarita. She thought, I couldn't have my Mexican food without a margarita. And the woman came back to Marilyn the next day and said, Marilyn, I don't even like the taste of margaritas. When I got really present and drank it really slowly, I don't even like it. I was so on autopilot that I wasn't even tasting what I was drinking every day. And it changed a woman's whole life. So there's a lot of ways to look at alcoholism. It's something that's probably better dealt with in a session. You could book with Marilyn, you could book with me, book with Gary Douglas or Dane here, or there's 1,000 amazing facilitators out there. Well, hundreds of amazing facilitators in the world who are great with dealing with this. But you can get a lot by reading The Gift of Allowance by Gary Douglas and Right Recovery for You. And then after that, there's 1,000 opportunities and possibilities with handling that in a very, very different and effective way.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Whew. Changing the world.
Yep.
Wow. Cool. Okay. Next question.
Ready. Fire it at me.
Okay. So I'm going to read it the way it was written, and then I think we'll put it into a question. So maybe something like, calm the nervous system with all the intensity that is going on now, other than return to sender. So what I think the question is what would it take to calm the nervous system with all the intensity that is going on, other than using return to sender?
Well, my question is, why don't you want to use return to the sender? I'm sorry, but I have to target you for asking that question, whoever. I can't target you because it's an anonymous question, but what the hell? It's a really good tool. But if the question is more return to sender isn't working for me, then we can address that. Because I think that, like, okay, so there's a tool in Access Consciousness called Who Does This Belong To? Because we're basically psychic SpongeBob SquarePants. Like, we're so psychic of everything that's going on, psychically aware of everything that's going on around us at all times. And if we feel the vibration of our neighbor having a money problem, then we're going to start to have that vibration as though it's ours. And then we create our life based on their energy. And that's a very damaging way to live. And it's very unfortunate that that is how we live, but that's how we live. So the way to change that is by asking the question, who does this belong to? And you don't have to identify that, oh, it's the neighbor, but you just want to start by asking the question. So Um, and a lot of people don't like the "who does this belong to" question because they want to embody their fucked upness, because we all do. I mean, it's like my sweet grandmother, who we called her Baba Florence, and Baba Florence started watching The Young and the Restless soap opera when she was like, when I think it came out in 1973. That's when Baba started watching. And Baba kept watching until she died in 2022. And she wanted her life to be painful and dramatic, just like on The Young and the Restless. And she thought that everybody was jealous of her. And she always had these friends who would come to her house, like kleptomaniacs. She would like attract these kleptomaniacs into her house. And like her sister-in-law would steal from her, her friends would steal from her, but my Baba was always bragging about how rich she was. It was hilarious. So she would like create all these problems, but like she had to, in order for her life to embody The Young and the Restless, you know? My dad calls it the old and the useless. Because like that's his mother-in-law. And his mother-in-law would like come over and turn on the TV and be watching The Young and the Restless. And I think the only way he could survive was humor.
So funny.
But she was actually, Baba, I know you're listening. I love you though. You were the most fun person in my childhood. So don't get me wrong. You know, there was a lot of excitement everywhere that Baba went. But that's a perfect example of why people don't want to use "who does this belong to." We all are a version of Baba Florence.
Yeah.
And unless we're willing to give up our soap opera life or our telenovela life, you know, it's not pretty.
Yeah. Well, in regards to Return to Sender, I've heard Gary say that sometimes you just have to get really strong and aggressive with it, like really just use the tool in a potent way, like get strong with it.
Yeah. Sometimes I even yell the tools, you know, because it just creates more of an energetic. I mean, I have to be careful with that because I don't want to like do force and then not be present. But like sometimes I'll just like I was running personalities clearings and I was telling Gary that it wasn't really working that well. And he's like, you got to be really intense and powerful in your personality clearings. And I'd never heard him say to anybody that you're supposed to say a clearing statement a certain way until then. And so I was like, all the personalities that I'm using. And like, I just was so strong willed about it. And it really worked. Whereas before, I was just doing lip service to it, I was just saying it.
Yeah. There's a game called Skyrim, and they have this power called a shout. And it's pretty cool because when you're playing, he shouts and then you get to see all the energy go. And I'm like, oh, cool.
Oh, sweet. I like that.
Yeah. Well, we are at the 30-minute mark. I'm so grateful that you hopped on because I knew we were going to change the world.
This was fun, Shawna. I'd love to come on again. Thank you for having me today.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks everybody for listening, and be you and change the world.
Okay. Bye, everyone.